Welcome back to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast, where we highlight cool people who do cool things and talk about cool stuff in residence life and college student housing. I'm your guest host, Crystal Lay, and I use the she, her series pronouns. Today, we're going to be talking to Emma Rash about transferable skills. Now, I was an RA during my junior and senior year of college, and I had plans to go into my area of study, which was broadcast communications. But then I had a conversation with my friend who was also an RA, and it completely changed my career path, and I found myself applying to grad school. But every RA does not go on to grad school or does not go on to pursue a career in housing. So I am talking to folks who were RAs to find out how they're using their RA skills in a job that is not housing. I'll start off by having our guests introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emma Rash. I am 6 months post-grad, which is wild from my senior year of college. I graduated from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, the Prescott campus in Prescott, Arizona, which is a tiny town of a bunch of retirement communities and college students. But I loved my 4 years there. I was an RA my sophomore and junior year of college. And then my senior year, we had some unique circumstances, which we can talk about later, but I ended up taking on a full-time supervisor role my senior year while also being a full-time student. In May of 2023, I got the opportunity to graduate, woohoo, and then walked across the stage and walked into my current job. I serve as a security analyst for a defense contractor here in Arizona. Essentially what I do for them is security threat and terrorist analysis on large machinery that the US government builds and creates to protect Americans both at home and abroad. So I love what I do. It is not at all what I thought I would be doing post-grad, but I love that I'm able to use my major, which I guess I should say that too. I have a major in global security and intelligence studies with a double minor in Arabic and business admin. So definitely in my career field, which my degree lines up with, but I have learned a lot and I'm excited to continue to grow in this career field and probably pop back over to my government law enforcement side, which is where I actually started. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And thank you so much, Crystal, for having me.
Wow. I feel really safe all of a sudden. That is wonderful. And congratulations on your recent graduation as well.
Thank you so much.
So let's start, Emma. Tell us about why did you decide to become an RA?
Yeah, that's a great question. So an RA, a resident assistant, serves a community of college students, right? And I essentially freshman year, we were sent home March of 2020 for COVID, but we actually went through the RA application in February. So before COVID was even an idea in our minds. And I applied to that process and wanted to be an RA as there is a job aspect, and you can tell in the career I do now. I love helping people and I love leading people. There's a huge aspect of being an RA, of seeing growth and development, and that is one of my favorite things to see in people, especially young adults. I love working with that excited freshman who just got off the bus, right? Mom's rolling up with the minivan. They're like, I'm so excited for college. And then you also have your juniors and seniors who are like, I'm done. I've been here forever. I don't care anymore. But watching them grow and develop and being there as a way to aid and help them was something I really wanted to do. And really that aspect of I want to help you grow and succeed and watch you walk across the stage 4 years later was really important for me. So that's why I applied to be an RA. Our school did not close down during COVID. We were masked up and hopped right back into it in August of 2020. So definitely a new challenge, but I really wanted to be an RA to help people guide and mentor. That was one of my favorite things. Probably why I stayed on as a second year RA as well, and then actually got to do a supervisor role my senior year.
Wow. So guiding, helping, leading people. I think there's some elements in providing a safe and welcoming environment too.
Absolutely.
So that's really, I love that you were able to do that and that was your motivation. So you mentioned your undergrad major earlier, your majors. So talk more about what those were and then how they led you to your current role.
Yeah, absolutely. So my undergrad major is in global security and intelligence studies. Its acronym is GSIS, or what our school affectionately called Jesus. So that confused a lot of people, but essentially how I explain global security and intelligence studies, it is a degree much like Homeland Security, where you are focused on the protection of American citizens and Americans both at home and abroad. But you are allowed to get very specific within that degree program. So I had 2 tracks or emphases in my degree program, which was leadership analysis, which actually turned out really helping me in my RA role. And then pre-law and law enforcement. For the longest time, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to law school. My dad was a lawyer and now does other things upper in the Department of Justice. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. But I kind of got into my degree program. My freshman year, I had a really, really cool opportunity to intern for the FBI. And so for the past 3 years of my undergrad, sophomore through senior year, I actually was working for the FBI part-time. And I got to work on cases that helped people and took people from the worst of the worst moments and got to see them have justice and love their lives and transform and help with our victim services team and kind of take that back and look like, when people are in their worst moments, and sometimes those happen at college, I was able to support and provide a service or something else for them. So that is kind of what our degree program focuses on. I also had an emphasis in pre-law and law enforcement, specifically in terrorism, looking at previous terrorist attacks on the United States, now future terrorist attacks. How has terrorism changed over the past 20 years? And I think a lot of the time we had professors who were 30-year FBI agents, 25-year CIA professors, like super cool people who had this phenomenal experience, and just being able to glean that from them as much as possible to kind of take and put into my current role was really cool. I took an Arabic minor because all of us are required to have a language. So Arabic was mine. And then my business minor kind of came out of nowhere. I was taking a leadership analysis, like business management class, and absolutely fell in love with it. And was able to take a lot of my business corporate skills from that minor and kind of even apply it in my daily skills as an RA, but specifically as an RA supervisor. And so that business administration, kind of your standard, like, what do businesses look like? What does the corporate world look like? How are we changing and performing to better serve our customer? And the whole thing as an RA, actually, it was our housing director's whole thing, is the 3 C's, which was care, connections, and customer service. And not only is that how I lived my life as an RA supervisor, but it's still currently how I live my life and how you just start trickling into those transferable skills. But yeah, that's my undergrad major and my 2 minors. It feels weird being post-grad, but it's exciting.
That is exciting. And it sounds like there was a lot of overlap. Like it almost seems like, every day, whether you were in class, you were in the RA role, and also you said the way you live your life, like seamless. It feels pretty seamless. So I do want to transition into the skills. Because there's a lot of overlap between everything you were doing.
Absolutely.
However, are there specific skills that you think you got or you learned as an RA that you feel like, yes, I'm using this every day in my current role?
Yes, absolutely. Honestly, when I was preparing for this podcast, I was like, there's an endless list. I could go on and forever. But number one, and this was something that was drilled into us as RAs when I started, is customer service. You think about, some RAs are like, what do you mean? I'm like, your residents and their parents actually are your customers. And your goal is to make sure and create a home environment for them, right? We kind of talked about that earlier. A place where they feel safe, a place where they feel at home, that they can come to you with anything and everything. And that is very true in the corporate world. Very, very true. Every day, even as a security analyst, I work with a lot of engineers, and those engineers every day are coming to me. Can I say this? Can I do this in my program? Can I do this in my project? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Or no, you can't, but I can provide you with this. And a lot of that is an RA, right? An RA is being a resource. Well, I'm a security analyst for a defense contractor, and I am a resource for hundreds of team members every day. Can I do this? No, but you can do this. Here's another resource. How do I make sure that our company can succeed and make money while still serving our customer? And my customer looks a little different, right? Obviously, the big company as itself has customers, but also like an engineer is my customer. My goal is to serve them so that we're protected not only as a company, but as like greater America, you build out and out and out. And one of my bosses recently actually said, even the littlest, tiniest things that you do in your job. Like I bought flowers for our admin who literally serves our whole program the other day. Her close family member had passed. And like she'd only met me twice, but those little acts of customer service to make sure the greater team is feeling supported, make sure your success as a team is much wider, right? And so I really, really, really make an effort to make sure my team feels constantly served and supported. I always told my boss, Justin Muntz, housing director over at Embry-Riddle, I will give him a shout out. I am a servant leader. I will always serve my residents, serve my RAs first, because they're more likely to be able to serve their residents and so go out from there and then serve our team overall. So customer service is absolutely number one. The second one is conflict resolution and conflict de-escalation. I always told Justin when I came into this job, I hated conflict. There's like a little part of me that still does. So like I hated conflict. I am a people pleaser by nature. And going into a very big, in my opinion, scary big girl adult corporate world, people don't have time for you as a people pleaser. They want what they want and they want it now. And a lot of times residents can be like that. And so kind of transferring those skills of like, okay, you two have a roommate conflict, right? You want to stay up all night and play video games. You want to go to bed early and study for your tests. Okay, how are we sitting down and mediating that so you both can succeed? Being a security analyst, the defense contractor, same exact thing. Two people come with a conflict. We're trying to figure out a resolution so they both still make money, they both still have a job, and they both still get to succeed at the end of the day, right? And I have loved seeing that transition because as a girly who is very afraid of conflict, I am now, especially in my RA role, I got a lot of situations that I was like, ooh, I have to do a roommate mediation for these two, and I don't think it's gonna go well. And you know what? And then surprisingly coming to a resolution and it was okay. And I was like, I can do this. Being able to like just take those communication and de-conflict skills and move them over and be like, yeah, I can do this in the corporate world too, is a huge one. And then the third one, another one I would say, and this was also like care and connections, huge as an RA, right? We talk about like you are creating a home and safe environment. My favorite story, one of my favorite stories, I've only got a lot of good stories as an RA and as an RA supervisor, is one of my residents were 2 weeks in, it's COVID. So they all came by my door masked up and introduced themselves. And one of them was like, we already have a huge test. He was an engineer. I went to a predominantly STEM school. The kid like off the charts, aced his test. He ran over to my room and was like, oh, look at what I did. Like I aced my test. I got an A, right? And like little sophomore RA Emma was like, I'm so proud of you. And so like, I always had a thing, if they got an A on these like exams, I'd make them cookies. And there are still residents who to this day will text me and be like, hey, I succeeded on this. And I'm like, here's a $5 Venmo for some cookies. I did that like literally just the last week. There's such a like success in that care and connections, and they last you forever, right? And carbon copy in the corporate world, right? I am caring and connecting with people sometimes in a very different way. It's not necessarily like, hey, I am at my worst mentally. It is, hey, I'm really struggling with my job and I need you as a security analyst to better prepare me so I don't get fired, or so I can present this well and not face the consequences, right? And like watching those people succeed because you care, because you take the time to connect, because you go the extra mile makes all the difference in the world, right? Justin can probably tell you, speak to this a lot. I often probably went too far for my residents, but I loved seeing their success at the end of the day and just seeing them be like, yeah, I can do this. I had a very difficult transition from freshman residents to upperclassmen residents. I loved the freshman feel, but when you get up to those upperclassmen residents, they're like, we don't need you. I'm like, but I want to be needed.
Mhm.
And so working with various different types of people goes back into that connections piece, right? I had residents who were like, I don't want to leave my room. I don't want to talk to you. And I was like, well, guess what? Every month for 5 minutes, you have to sit down and tell me what's going on with your life.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like we do that all the time on the corporate side of things. You know what? We sit down with people we've never even met. We don't know their stories. We don't know their background. We have no idea. But sitting down with them, connecting with them, being like, here's a path to help you succeed, is really, really unique. I definitely thought my goal is to eventually go back to the FBI and be an agent. They kind of told me like, hey, you need to go get your outside work experience. So that's kind of what I'm doing at my defense contracting work. But I'm so excited to go back because as an intern, right, even like going out to these crime scenes with these agents, you are seeing people at their worst moment. And sometimes all they need is care and connections. And boom, they're more willing to talk to you. They're more willing to communicate with you. They're more willing to help just because you cared and showed that connection in the first place. That is a lot of times how I try and live my life in general, like taking that extra step to care and connect, both in corporate, both as an RA, they transferred back and forth all the time. Sorry, I know that was a lot. I have a lot of transferable skills. I could talk about this all day. I love this, but those are some three big ones that I'm like, I don't believe that everyone should be an RA, but I believe that the people who are RAs are significantly better prepared for their lives. My two best friends from college, and actually one of the best friends' boyfriends, best friends in college was kind of our group, three of us actually. All of us were RAs and all of us are succeeding very well and they use their skills every day. One of them works at Disney World on like a Rise of the Resistance ride. She uses customer service every day to make sure people have the most magical experience on earth. Like I constantly use her as an example. But
Wow. And it also, what I'm picking up on is it sounds like you also found your voice. You became more confident. And I think you also learned some things about boundaries, right? Like, what do I need to provide to this other person without also sacrificing myself? Because the conversation you had with Justin, where you all talked about, are you overextending? Are you giving too much? And at what point is it, yes, this is a good level of satisfaction and humanity for this other person without sacrificing myself. And I love the enthusiasm that you bring to it. And just I'm wondering, um, your job sounds intense, and being an RA can be intense. As far as like, you're like, FBI, crime scenes, helping people. There's a lot of emotional labor. And so my question for you, particularly if you could give a tip to current RAs, who maybe have a major that's maybe more intense or, going into a more intense career path. How do you care for yourself? If you're comfortable answering that, like how do you create boundaries or distance or wellness as an RA, but then also in your career path?
absolutely. That is a phenomenal question. And I'm so glad you asked it because as you probably noticed, when I was a brand new RA my sophomore year, I didn't set boundaries. And it ended up kicking me in the butt repeatedly. We had a phenomenal assistant director of residence life who was like, and you hear this phrase all the time in res life, you cannot pour from a cup that is empty. And when I was an RA supervisor my senior year, I consistently told my RAs that you cannot pour into your residents if your cup is not full. I, as a supervisor, cannot pour into you if my cup is not full. And honestly, it took a lot of actually Justin and another one of my best friends who she was an RA for 2 years and then became a supervisor with me, looking at me sometimes and being like, is that really the next step? Is that really what you should be doing right now?
Mm.
Like, nope. Like, as Justin's walking out of the office, go home. Why are you still here? Because I want to, nope, the weekend's over. You're about to be on call for a week. Okay, go take a little trip. Get off campus. I traveled with our university a lot with our admissions team to talk about like our degree program specifically and like housing residence life. And one of the biggest things with that was people are like, how do you take care of yourself? Like Embry-Riddle is such an intense school, but this goes for all majors. Like as a student, you are like academics, RAs, residents can pop up at any time. And you are absolutely right. My job right now, I feel like I'm always on. And as an RA, you can feel like you are always on, right? Because at any moment, you could get a phone call, you could get a duty phone call, you could have a resident knock on your door, and it could be a crisis. And how do you balance this? Like, I'm going to take a night to myself. Oh, I'm getting a call from a resident right now. And I used to be an RA that answered no matter what. And I was like, I'm the best RA because I do this. Not true. As RAs, you have to set that boundary with your residents. And I definitely am not the best at doing this. It was a huge learning curve for me, especially as a supervisor, because I'm a helper. I want to be there to support you whenever you need it. But when you have 44 residents, there's always going to be a crisis. And that is why housing residence life is set up so that you are not always on call. Because guess what? Your residents shouldn't be calling you. They should call someone else. I'll never forget, I was on a work trip with the university, and one of my residents, like, massive crisis. And I was massive mental health crisis. I was not able to be there for them. And I came back and I was physically upset. I was like, why am I not there? I'm not doing good enough. No, you are good enough. You are a good RA. There are other people for that. You cannot always be on. And yes, even right now, I feel like in my job, I'm like, I have to help everyone right away. But also, I think what people don't realize is when you're always on like that and you're not taking care of yourself, you will mess up. And then you will and you're going to mess up anyways, but you will definitely mess up if you're pulled in 1,000 directions and you're not taking care of yourself. Phenomenal example of this. I am 3 months into my job. It is more demanding than I ever thought it would be. And I stopped working out for the first 2 months because and working out is a huge stress relief for me. I'm a runner, I'm a hiker, I like to be outdoors. And in 2 months in, and I was feeling like crap. I was making all these errors at work. I wasn't doing well. And I was like, you know what? Let's like kick back in my workout routine. I'm like, but I'm so exhausted. I don't have time. And I started going back to my spin classes, hiking on weekends, going out with friends, which is kind of how I refill. And all of a sudden I'm getting awards at work 3 months in, and I'm succeeding in like all these things. And it's not to say like you do this one thing and your life is perfect, right? That is not at all it. But something I consistently communicated with my RAs is I was like, if you are not doing well, guess what? We have a whole nother team of 40 of us to come behind you and support you. I will brag on my team of 10 RAs because I can for a second. Those 10 RAs had each other's backs like nobody's business. And I felt that because as a supervisor, I enforced that. I was like, you know what, guys, we are not leaving each other out to dry. We are not leaving each other hanging. Like, if I have to hold the RA duty bag as a supervisor for 2 hours, that's what I'm going to do. And that transfers to, you know what, I'm going to have to stay after 2 hours late at work. So this gets done. Great. I'm going to take the morning off. Making sure you find that balance in order so that you can succeed and feel fulfilled to serve your people. I know I'm not being fulfilled, and this is a little tip and trick for you, RAs. If you are ever at the point in your job where you find every single thing your residents contact you for, they're annoying or they're a problem. Halfway through my junior year, so I'm working with upperclassmen residents at this time, I was like, everyone is annoying. They're awful. They don't know what they're doing. What am I doing? And I'm like, this is a check for Emma. Like, I need to come back. Why do I do this job? Why do I serve these people? How do I reset? And honestly, like taking a week away from residents, being like, hey guys, I'm not going to be available. Sorry. And sticking to that. That was the hardest part for me, was sticking to that. But my God, I felt so much more refreshed and able to come back and serve people when I'm fulfilled. And making sure you take that time, whatever that looks like for you, right? As an RA and as a student, is it taking a walk outside once a day? Me and my roommate, who was my supervisor with me, my co-supervisor, we called them hot girl walks. Like, when are you taking time to get outside? Oh my gosh, it's snowing. Ugh, snowing. No, let's go make snow angels. Like, right. Like, getting outside is my big thing, but whatever your thing is, if it's reading a book, if it's going to see family, if it's going out with friends, if it's taking a walk around campus, make sure that you are fulfilled, because I promise you, like in this RA job, it can feel like we are always on. People, I think sometimes the biggest complaint I hear from other RAs is, I never get to be a student. And we remind RAs when they start this job, like, you are always being extra watched. But I do tell my RAs, I'm like, you may always be being watched on this campus because you are an example, you are a leader. But remember that sometimes it's okay to leave campus, get away, step back, go out to another city, go home, whatever that looks like for you, to make sure you're fulfilled and it doesn't feel like every second of the day you're talking to your residents. So hopefully that kind of answers your question, but that would be my biggest tip and trick is the moment you start feeling like everyone is a problem, everything is an issue, you need to kind of come back and center and be like, okay, what do I need to do so that I feel fulfilled in this role?
There were so many I'm like golden nuggets, like wisdom in there. I was like, you need just write a book, right? 'Cause
I have thought about it. I really have thought about this. My parents were like, you should write a book about all your RA stories and everything. And it was going to be called The Shit Your Kids Don't Tell You About, written by a college RA. And it was going to have all these tips and tricks in it and like funny stories from my time as an RA. But we'll see if I ever write it. I'll let you know if I do.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I like the piece about like how do you check in with yourself, right? What are the things that your body, your mind is telling you to say, oh, it's annoying, everything is awful. Is that your way you check in? Or you're like, oh, I'm not doing my typical or usual routines and it's impacting me mentally, physiologically. Like how do you know your body and yourself well enough to give you cues on what you need to adjust?
Absolutely.
I also think about, for folks who have been on an airplane, they will say you put your mask on first. And that can be a little unsettling if you have another human you're trying to care for, or maybe you're next to a small child.
Right.
But I always think about if that little person is depending on you and they need you to be strong and well, so you can help them. It can't be the other way around. And
I
so
actually love that analogy. I've never heard that, but I am going to use that. I'm going to steal that little nugget from you, Crystal. I've never heard that analogy, but I love it.
And that's what you talked about, right? If you are well, if your cup is full, whatever is the excess, right? That's what you're giving out to other humans. And so how are you continuing to listen to your body, knowing yourself well enough, and then asking for what you need? And I think that was amazing. I think also being in a leadership role, you said folks are watching you. They are. And I think they're watching how you set boundaries, how do you react to things? And it's not to put more pressure, like, oh my gosh, folks are watching me. It's just knowing that you're a leader and people are looking to you for an example. And it comes with the role.
Absolutely. A little nugget on that. A great point to that. As a sophomore RA, was like, I always have to be perfect for my residents. My residents cannot ever see me in tears. They can't ever see me upset. They can't ever see me having a bad day. And then I realized like 4 months in, like that's garbage. I'm sitting there telling these residents and telling my coworkers that like, we are a team, we work together. I'm going to have bad days. You're going to have bad days. And I completely kind of transferred that when I became a second year RA. I was like, look, guys, I'm not perfect all the time and I'm going to have bad days. You see me in tears, it's probably not a good day. I'm not a big crier, so it doesn't happen very often. Like, I really love that point of like, you as an RA cannot be perfect. That is an unrealistic expectation, and show your residents that. Right. Like leaders are not perfect, but leaders are real. And your residents need to realize that you're not just this fake God who floats up in the air, who does everything right. Guess what? I'm a firm believer that every RA probably had a policy violation before they became an RA. Like, you are not perfect. What you advertise to your residents is your business, but I try and be as honest as possible with my residents. Like, how are you doing? You know what, guys? This week is garbage. Like, it sucks.
Yeah, and then it's things are hard and I'm going to use this resource, right?
Exactly.
And naming that, and it's okay. And I remember when I was a living staff member as a professional member, and some of my students saw me at the grocery store. And they were amazed I was buying groceries. I'm like, yes, I eat food. And I actually leave campus to buy groceries. And yes, I go to the doctor. But I think it's those day-to-day things that we can do that are just normal and a part of our routine that shows folks that, we do try as best as we can to have a good sense of wellness, or integration. Work-life integration is what I like to call it.
Absolutely.
So my last question for you, maybe second to last, we'll see. So your classes and your role lined up so well. So my question for you is, for RAs who are saying, you know what, I'm glad that worked out for you, Emma, but I am majoring in English literature. What are some ways or, some things that they could still pull from to try to create a connection between their classes and the RA role?
Absolutely. Another great question. You're so good at this. That is a phenomenal question. And kind of to give some context before I give my full official answer, I went to a very small STEM school of 3,000 students. And kind of the idea behind this is, right, you go to the school, you're paying tons of money for private education. You better know what you're doing. And one of the biggest things I found with residents is these residents were in mental crisis because they got an F on a paper, and that means they can now not be the brand new F-16 pilot, which has been their dream and goal as a kid, which is great. I'm glad that's your dream and goal. But them hitting this point of, I failed one class, I'm going to fail everything, I don't belong here, this is not my degree program. Or second to that, them having the breakdown of, I hate engineering, I hate it here, I don't like this. Two of my best friends, both RAs, one went into housing. She was a psych minor, found out she loved psych more than she did global skip. Fine. And she succeeds in housing. I learned so much from her being her best friend as an RA and as a supervisor. I took so many of her things and reused them. And then my other best friend, RA for a year, went off to work at a coffee shop, now works at Disney World, not at all using her global security and intelligence studies degree. But every day she took what she needed from her classes. And this is where I'm going to kind of pull in that class piece, right? Every day in classes, it's not just about your course content. It's about what classes provide to students. Classes provide connection. Classes provide the opportunity to network, to organize, to time manage. Guess what? There are probably a lot of those classes, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily prepared to write an intelligence brief like I did 2 years ago. But let me tell you, I will always and forever remember the time management that class taught me. Did it teach me how to study better? I'm preparing now, when I study for tests and exams within my job, oh, I'm pulling on these study habits from forever ago. I am a firm believer that just a degree is a degree. How you use it is up to you. And I brought that to a lot of my residents, and it can be a spicy opinion every once in a while. People are like my little brother is an engineer, and people are like, well, what if he doesn't use his engineering degree? That was a waste of money. Absolutely not. You can go and do something else phenomenally cool with that degree. Perfect example, shout out to my mom if she listens to this. My mom majored in something she was passionate about. My mom is a Latin American studies major. Let me tell you, everybody when she graduated from undergrad was like, what the hell are you going to do with that? Guess what? My mom went to medical school and she's been a family practice doc for almost 30 years. You have a degree. How you use it and what you pull from those classes and those learning opportunity, entirely up to you. Now, I will say that with this caveat, what you put into it is what you get out of it. I have watched students who became RAs, really didn't put much into the job, and will forever and ever hate housing and residence life. Let me tell you, I would jump back into if I got fired today, I would jump back into housing and residence life, because the opportunities and networking and skills that you learn as an RA, that you learn being a student and an RA, most specifically, what you're learning in those classes, what you're pulling in and how they meet together with whatever you're going to do over here, whatever you're going to do when you walk across the stage, is absolutely okay. And you will learn so much. I think there's so much more than just the class content you are learning, right? There's all these memes on the internet, right? You're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a college education. What is worth it? Well, you know what? If you're not really that interested in your classes, switch degree programs. Or you know what? Just take from those classes the other skills that they teach you. Great example, one of my best friends, she did not go to Riddle. She actually goes to NAU. Shout out to my girly. Speech pathology major, is going to grad school at NAU doing speech pathology. She has taken some of those phenomenal skills. She can be a phenomenal speech language pathologist. But what you do over here does not necessarily have to be what you do here. But what you put into over here, and I guess this will be a little bit difficult on the podcast, but what you put into box A is what will transfer and you'll get out of in box B. And I'm a firm believer that the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And I will say this, the things you get out may not always be good. I always tell people that sometimes there's trauma with being an RA, like sitting down with a resident and they're telling you a story and you're like, oh, I'm resonating a little bit too closely with this. How do you process that trauma over here? And now you're able to help someone in box B because of this kind of ugly stuff that you went through in box A. Hopefully that makes some sense. But absolutely, the stuff you glean from your classes, from being an RA, you don't necessarily have to take exactly that and go and be this. There's 1,000 different shootouts. I think people think I'm a very determined person, which I am. And I was like, I'm going to work for the FBI. I know it. Guess what I'm not doing? Working for the FBI. I had 4 job offers when I left college to work in housing and residence life, to work in our admissions department, which I have a special place in my heart for admissions, to work at my defense contractor, or to work for the FBI, and turning down a dream job, right? Because it's not what fit me in this moment. And that's okay. And I want every college student, RA, otherwise, to hear that it is okay to not have a plan, to have your plan change, or to completely go some other way than someone else was thinking, right? There's 1,000 different paths, and how you pick them is up to you.
I just like, I feel I'm getting emotional. Like I feel so motivated. And I think our college students need someone to say it's okay.
Yes.
Right. It's okay. And so thank you for sharing that. So we're coming to the end of our time, Emma. And so if folks wanted to learn more about whether it be your career path or the transferable skills that you shared, is there a particular like book, podcast, website, resource that you would refer them to?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I am a reader, so a book that I am reading right now, and it is boxed away. I just moved into my new apartment, so excuse the mess. But it is called Atomic Habits. It is sold at Target. I bought it in a very hopeful, like, I'm gonna be a better person. And then one night I was like, I should just sit down and read a couple chapters. Well, 20 chapters later, it very much teaches you about habits and like bad habits that you want to break, habits you want to change. And there were a lot of things in college and habits I did in college that really didn't serve me once I stepped out of college. And I was like, well, how do I transfer those? How do I make them better? And this book kind of helped me with that. So Forever Atomic Habits. I said this in an interview I did with my university, like an exit interview about being an RA and like my time at the university as an RA and as an RA supervisor. Always listen to your RA and your housing staff. They are geniuses. So I'm going to plug all my housing staff right now. If you work in housing and residence life, you're amazing. They usually have very wise advice. And usually where I've gotten a lot of the advice and motivation and how I've lived my life and my opinions are from the people who I surround myself with. Justin Muntz, I love him. Yes, I learned so much about housing and residence life because I think often I would walk into his office and I'm like, Justin, you will not believe this. And he's like, that happens all the time. How are we going to work through that? And I was like, well, that's not the response I was expecting, but okay. So looking to leaders in your life, like how they lead their life, how they walk into situations. Forever, I will change because of my best friend, Cam. She's the one who works in housing now. Shout out to her, love her. How I answer questions to people who are like, hey, this happened. Instead of responding very aggressively, like, why did you do that? What the heck happened? Walking into a party full of residents going, explain to me what was going on here. Help me to understand. Walk me through. Getting on that level with people and understanding, but I glean so much from the people I surround myself with. And make sure you surround yourself with good people, but definitely ask those leaders, ask those big questions. I learned a lot being a female leader in like a very big role from the agents that I worked with at the FBI, right? They are in a predominantly male role. And they go in and they're their own people and they kick ass and they do really cool things. And I'm like, I want to be you. And they have really good advice, fun fact about being a female or being what you identify as in a general space. So yeah, people you surround yourself with, Atomic Habits. What was another? I read a lot of books about high functioning anxiety, which is kind of where I fit into the thing, but figure out what your clutches are, what you lean on, and how you can develop and create those to serve you. and kind of filter those to make sure you can be the best you can be. Is it a constant working process? Yes. Is it often frustrating and really demanding? Also, yes. I by no means try and portray that my life is perfect, that yes, I'm doing a job I absolutely love. Like, no, it is a challenge each and every day. And each and every day we experience stuff that's like, this sucks. This is great. And how you work through those, the habits, how you adapt, whether it's therapy, whether it's being outside, like whatever it is, and how you transfer that to how you live your life is really important.
Everything you share, like I feel like you've been really vulnerable, share some really beautiful pieces, some great resources. I'm so grateful for the time that we've had together. And then, the Atomic Habits piece that you shared, we're going to add those to the show notes. I also have something from Okuoi that talks about transferable skills. And it almost perfectly matches a lot of the things that you talked about. So I'm also going to add that list to the show notes. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that there's a lot of cool things that we're saying as a field we believe you should have. And then to hear you saying them out loud is really, really neat. So thank you so much, Emma, for
Thank you
joining
so
me
much for
today.
having me. This has been phenomenal. I miss how, like, there's still a part of my heart that misses housing and residence life. Like, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun, and best of luck to all of you out there who are graduating from college and moving on.
Yes, and thank you all, definitely our listeners, for joining us on this episode of ResEdChat. And if you have an idea of a topic or a person you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know by reaching out to Roompact. And take care.